US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has commented on her controversial visit to Taiwan by saying the US will not allow China to isolate the island. Tensions are high in the Taiwan Strait following her visit, and China is conducting live-fire military drills around the island. Pelosi made her comments in Japan on the final leg of a trip to Asia. Her stopover in Taiwan enraged China's government, which considers the island a part of its territory. Right, well, let's listen to what Nancy Pelosi had to say.
The Chinese have tried to isolate Taiwan. They may try to keep Taiwan from visiting or participating in other places, but they will not isolate Taiwan by preventing us to travel there. We've had high-level visits, senators in the spring, a bipartisan way, continuing visits, and we will not allow them to isolate Taiwan.
Right, well, let's talk with Andrew Small. He's with the Asia programme at the German Marshall Fund. Welcome to the programme, Andrew. So the US House Speaker said that the US will not allow China to isolate Taiwan. So what could the US do to stop it from happening?
Well, this isn't, as she said, just the United States. Certainly, the visit itself was that kind of show of support, a demonstration that whatever the position China takes, parliamentarians and lawmakers at least will continue to come through and make their visits. And this isn't just US parliamentarians and lawmakers. We've seen that increasing from European parliamentarians too, I think in a context in which there is a sense that Taiwan is under heightened threat within the parameters of a one-China policy, that countries need to start strengthening economic linkages, personal ties, pushing on the informal side, even as Beijing has been squeezing on the diplomatic side in terms of its international recognition, expanding the scope of informal recognition, essentially showing that other countries have a stake in Taiwan, and doing that in as direct and personal a way as possible. So I think the sense is that's a collective responsibility of nations around the world, and that Pelosi's visit itself was part of that process.
Andrew, what's your take on China's drills, which at the least seem to simulate a blockade of Taiwan?
Well, China takes an approach to these things that some have characterized as a kind of reactionary assertiveness. That is, they wait for an opportunity like this, and then they go ahead with a series of moves that they plan to make at some point anyway. And in this case, it has indeed given China the opportunity to test out its capacity to pull off what does look very much like a kind of blockade simulation, testing its missiles, its planes, testing Taiwan's air defenses more intensely, the cyber capabilities. And I think for a lot of people, this is what they're worried about first, rather than an outright invasion, that this is the kind of steps that we would see from China, and this has been an opportunity that they've taken advantage of to test out whether that might be possible. The PLA, the Chinese military, is untested in a significant way in real combat, so this is an opportunity for them to press ahead with some of these maneuvers and push the limits of things that they hadn't done before.
Right, well, Japan has said that several Chinese missiles have landed in its economic zone. So what is this zone? And is it a miscalculation, do you think, from the Chinese side, or rather a threat?
So this is the first time, as far as we're aware, that missiles have landed in Japan's exclusive economic zone. It was within the territory that China had designated for these drills to take place. I think it should be noted in this context that Japan has made clear in recent years that it is prepared to be directly engaged with the United States if China were to take military action against Taiwan. But I think this is less about a direct threat to Japan, given the specific locations that it took place, more as China simply saying that it has the prerogative to act as it sees fit around Taiwan's periphery, regardless of the concerns of neighbouring countries, and particularly regardless of the concerns of the Japanese.
Right, let's talk about China's economy, because it's facing many challenges at the moment. Could Beijing afford a large-scale confrontation with Taiwan and its allies?
I think what has to be understood about the Chinese economy, for all of China's economic weight, It's still reliant on the dollar system. It's still reliant on US technology. Yes, its current economic situation is indeed very fragile. It's probably the weakest economic situation that we've seen there in a couple of decades, really, since the aftermath of Tiananmen. But if we saw the same sanctions imposed on Russia, for instance, that were imposed on China for actions against Taiwan, it would be even more costly, I think, for China. And China's well aware of this. Even if its economy were in a much stronger position, it would face really severe consequences if these sorts of measures were to be taken. But even short of that level of a confrontation, even short of an outright invasion, I think what we're seeing from companies and countries right now is a questioning really of their level of exposure to China, whether this level of exposure makes sense, whether there needs to be kind of a harder push for economic diversification. And that's not just about Taiwan or about China's dealings with Russia. It's about the zero COVID policy as well. And really the sense that in China, we're dealing with an authoritarian regime that's prone to these increasingly ill-judged moves domestically and internationally, and that some of the risks are becoming too high for them.
Andrew Small with the German Marshall Fund. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, as mentioned, those drills are causing tension in the region and fueling fears a war may break out. Our correspondent in Taiwan, Zachary Lee, has been speaking with fishermen in the southwest part of the island about the impact of the drills.
This was the very first time that Captain Chen Hongmin has had to return to the port due to the Chinese military exercises. He says he's never before felt so threatened by Beijing's actions, and he doesn't want to take any risks.
I heard about the live fire exercise, so we are scared of being hit by a missile. I was supposed to work for 10 days. Now I will lose more than $3,000 for shortening my fishing time. It's fine for me this time, but what if Chinese military exercises become the new normal here?
Chen is not alone. Hundreds of Taiwanese fishing boats are lying idle in port. Many of their crews are worried that the drills might affect their livelihood over the long term. China started military exercises in 6 areas in waters surrounding Taiwan right after Nancy Pelosi left. And one of the areas is less than 12 miles from where I am, a port city in southern Taiwan. And this could mark a new stage of brinkmanship.
The Chinese People's Liberation Army begins military drills from August 4th to 7th. Please pay attention.
This is the first time that a national fishery radio station makes such warnings in Donggang, which has one of Taiwan's largest fishing harbors. Even the announcer herself finds it unusual.
I've worked here for 29 years, and this is the first time I need to announce a warning about PLA's military exercises. The situation here is very tense.
China's military drills have already affected and worried many fishermen in Taiwan. The Taiwanese military is on high alert. However, most of the residents here don't seem to be worried about a possible war.
I can't predict if a war will break out or not. I don't want to think about it. If it happens, it happens. I'm not too worried about it. Thinking about it too much doesn't really help.
They've been saying it for a long time. China has said they will attack us, but it has never happened. This time they probably just want to scare us. My kids are worried about war. They asked if war was possible here and where to hide. I told them where the shelters are, but we have no control over it. I don't want to worry about something that I can't control.
China's live fire military exercises have already raised tensions in the Taiwan Strait to the highest level in decades. But that is not anything that the fisherman Chen Hongmin can change. To him, what really matters is going out to fish to earn a living for him and his family.
All right, for more on the situation in Taiwan, let's cross over to DW's Joyce Lee, who's in Taipei. Joyce, good to see you. So what more can you tell us about China's military drills?
Well, the four-day drill continues today. More Chinese warplanes and naval vessels have crossed the Taiwan Strait median line. Now it's not just about China and Taiwan, but regional stability. On Thursday, China fired 5 missiles into waters that are part of Japan's exclusive economic zone. This is the first time such a thing had happened. And Tokyo strongly condemned the act and demanded Beijing to immediately stop the live-fire drills near Taiwan. Out of the 5 ballistic missiles falling into Japanese waters, 4 of them appear to have flown over Taipei. This has caused a bit of a panic in Taiwan. But the island's defense ministry downplayed the risk, declining to confirm if the missiles did overfly the island, only saying in a statement that they flew high into the atmosphere and posed no threat to the ground area. Some military experts in Taiwan said the overfly was more of a psychological warfare than real threats. President Tsai Ing-wen said Beijing's act is irresponsible. She stressed that Taiwan would not provoke conflicts but would firmly defend its sovereignty.
Joyce, well, actually, some airlines have cancelled flights to Taipei, so how much has this actually disrupted travel around the region?
Yes, Taiwan's Minister of Transportation said connecting flights via Taiwan had been reduced by half since the drill began on Thursday. Dozens of international flights are cancelled today. That includes carriers of Korean Air, Singapore Airlines and Malaysia Airlines. For those that did not cancel, they have to fly alternative routes via Japan and the Philippines. That could lead to more flying time for some of the flights.
Right, so there's been some disruption, and we've seen in our report how these drills are already affecting fishermen in Taiwan. Could you shed some light on how other businesses are dealing with the impacts of these stalled trade imports and exports?
Well, for now, there's no immediate impact on shipping, but Taiwanese companies are already preparing for possible trade disruptions beyond the 4-day drills. They are starting to think of solutions and rerouting and delaying orders until they have more clarity. And keep in mind that Taiwan produces more than half the semiconductor chips used in smartphones, computers, and cars. So any significant disruption would create shock waves to global industries.
Thank you, Joyce. DW's Joyce Lee in Taipei.